We all owe Resident Evil 6 an apology. First, I would like to say I've never been the biggest fan of previous iterations of the Resident Evil games, except for maybe the fourth one. Obviously, it's a classic, man. However, it just dawned on me as I was playing through Requiem. The complete overhaul and modernization of the franchise has led us to a unique gameplay experience of intense suspense, but also rewarding action. And it's all thanks to Resident Evil 6. Okay, I know what you're thinking. Resident Evil 6? That game was terrible. But just hear me out. Let me start by saying that before the remakes, I had only played Resident Evil 4 and a little bit of Resident Evil 5. And with the exception of Resident Evil 4, honestly, I never really enjoyed them growing up. For a title that was listed as an action horror game, I never really felt much horror. Maybe it was technological limitations or lack of interest. Maybe I was a psychopath. Could have been any number of reasons, but I just never felt as though I could fully immerse myself within the world, unlike other video games. And when Resident Evil 5 and Resident Evil 6 released, other titles had my attention. You had Uncharted, Assassin's Creed, even COD getting well-deserved sequels. Shifting focus to a Resident Evil game was not going to happen. However, there came a day where Resident Evil 5 and 6 were on sale, so I gave them a shot. Resident Evil 5 was first. It was fun playing as Chris Redfield for my first time, and I really enjoyed the multiplayer aspect of the game. Unfortunately, I lost interest and never came back to the game. Maybe it was because of another title that had my attention again. I'm not too sure. However, that was my last good memory on Resident Evil, because the moment I played Resident Evil 6, I regretted every single moment of it. Needless to say, I played like 30 minutes of this, and I never looked back. That is until Resident Evil 7 released. Resident Evil 7 fixed everything I previously had issues with, especially the horror aspect. I tried this game out on VR headset, and when I tell you I have never shut off a game faster in my life, I was terrified. They finally did it. The horror aspect had reached new heights. It may be partly due to the overwhelming success of Outlast, but that's a discussion for another day. Resident Evil 7 actually created an action horror game with an engaging story. Anyways, I say this because Capcom delivered a far better game than Resident Evil 6. I finally started liking the franchise as a whole. Therefore, when Village released, I had to see Ethan's story through. And to much of my surprise, a familiar face shows up. Chris Redfield. And although it's not in the best of circumstances, it was a wonderful conclusion to Ethan's story. So with the success of these two installments, Capcom knew it needed to modernize their earlier games, and with that came the remakes. Now I'll be honest, I didn't play Resident Evil 2 or 3 remakes because during that time I was struggling with an Overwatch and Apex Legends addiction. But I plan to play them soon, just trying to work my way through that backlog right now. Anyways, although I didn't play those remakes, I did play Resident Evil 4 remake, and man, being Leon again was so nostalgic and fun again. With great quality of life changes, this was all we could have hoped for in a franchise. So why am I going through all this? Well, these key events are what make Resident Evil Requiem stand out, including the travesty that was Resident Evil 6. You start Resident Evil Requiem as Grace Ashcroft, an FBI agent who has to investigate a series of victims who all keep dying in the same mysterious manner. The only thing they all have in common is they're survivors of the Raccoon City incident. Grace is ordered to investigate the Wrenwood Hotel where the latest victim was found dead and where her mother Alyssa Ashcroft was murdered. While investigating the hotel, she is led to a room with a bed full of photos of her spread out. Remembering the awful night her mother was murdered, she recalls her mom hiding an item behind a portrait. She investigates and finds a document and an unmarked floppy disk, wondering just what was her mother up to. Just then, the police officer that helped her earlier is acting peculiar and ends up being a form of a zombie. Narrowly escaping and defeating the newly turned officer, Grace notices someone is upstairs in the hotel. She opens the door only to be greeted by a man calling himself Dr. Victor Gideon. Noticing she is in danger, Grace tries to escape, but is too slow as the door she entered from locks behind her, and Gideon is able to subdue her by strangling her until she's unconscious. Meanwhile, fan favorite Leon S. Kennedy is investigating the same murders, and as he's investigating, he comes across Gideon and notices
he's carrying Grace, with the two of them making eye contact, but before Leon can act, Gideon shoots several individuals with a mysterious weapon and then begin to act erratic and violent. All hell breaks loose as Leon tries to contain the man-made outbreak. Thankfully, Leon manages to control the situation. However, Gideon escapes with Grace, and the hunt begins. Man, the gameplay in this game is beyond good. Playing as Grace feels like that RE7/8 gameplay with Ethan. Hiding in dimly lit rooms, narrowly escaping freaky creatures, and barely having enough survival items is what made me feel that sense of dread in the first place. Playing with Grace amplifies that tenfold, especially in the first person perspective. The creatures feel incredibly hard to defeat, even with all your tools at your disposal. Requiem gives you just enough to survive and make the best of your choices. Whenever I am Grace, my heart is racing and I feel as though it's about to jump out of my chest, especially with the giant monster that is chasing you all game. You never know where or when she'll pop up, and that's some of the most terrifying moments. Grace's gameplay is an amazingly terrifying experience, but her character is also fantastic as well. She's clearly mortified by what she has witnessed so far, however, her courage doesn't go unnoticed. She may be an FBI agent, but you can tell being a field operative is not her expertise. She exhibits signs of someone who is undergoing high stress situations, but she is far from a damsel in distress. In short, Grace is a strong female character, but is also a relatable human experience. Although playing with Grace is wonderful, the player needs a break from all that heart pounding suspense. That's where Leon comes in. Man, when I tell you, I feel unstoppable when I'm playing as Leon. Whoever I ran past as Grace, I'm sprinting full speed at as Leon. Playing as Leon feels like a reward for making your way through this terrifying care center. Also, he's not only my favorite Resident Evil character, he may very well be the most badass character in the franchise. And I love the opportunities to get revenge in this game. Because remember that zombie that scared you when you were Grace? Yeah, now it's payback time. But anyway, I feel a sense of relief wash over me when I swap to Leon and I can finally let loose. Leon also has some interesting character development occurring as well. We learn the events of Raccoon City are still affecting Leon to this day, and that he may have another reason for seeking out Victor Gideon. Regardless, Requiem's gameplay is the perfect blend of Biohazard and Village's scariness and the remake's action gameplay. I was wholeheartedly going to give this game a 9 out of 10, but boy, it proved me wrong. And it is 100% a masterpiece. The story is engaging, everyone feels like a key player, and every character introduced feels like they play a key role. None of them feel wasted. The gameplay exceeded my expectations, and I really feel immersed in the world as I play it. Furthermore, the combat feels fluid and realistic, especially the gunplay. I know in older REs you had to stand still to shoot. You can move and shoot in the newer installments, but the weapon sway and nervousness of characters are on full display as you play. A small detail that I really liked and noticed was Grace's hands shake as she ADSs on someone. Now you're probably wondering, if I like all these great things about the game, why was I going to give it a 9? Why not a perfect score immediately? Well, it was a personal issue for me. At first I felt as though I wasn't experiencing both sides equally. I felt as if we weren't gonna get much playtime as Leon, and I know Grace is the main focus point of the story, but after being mildly stressed for that long, I kinda wanted to kill a bunch of zombies. Well, that definitely occurs later in the game when you, spoiler alert, get to Raccoon City. We play a whole lot with Leon and we get to just unleash on these zombies. But the second reason for me, and this was a little more personal, was the user interface. More specifically, the inventory items. It took some time getting used to. I didn't really play the older version, so I know it's a little bit better now. However, I do recognize the quality of life fixes that they have made from the previous games, and I take that into account. And I believe these things have been fixed over time as well. Finally, other than a few immersion breaks in the form of small glitches and funny bugs, this game is a masterpiece and has set the new standard for future projects of the franchise. I loved my playthrough of Resident Evil 9 Requiem and have even started another playthrough where I'm not going to use healing items. I really want to get to that infinite ammo achievement, and I want to play through insane difficulty later on. But in the beginning, I did say we should be thanking Resident Evil 6 for this current run of Resident Evil games. And, well, Resident Evil 6 didn't save the franchise, The funny thing is, it nearly killed it. But because it failed so spectacularly, Capcom had no choice but to reinvent Resident Evil completely. And that reinvention is why Requiem exists. Requiem isn't just another sequel, it's the result of Capcom learning from its biggest mistake. Resident Evil 6 walked so that Resident Evil 7 could run, which in turn birthed Requiem, Game of the Year contender we see before us currently. We don't owe Resident Evil 6 praise, but we might owe it gratitude. Resident Evil didn't survive by playing it safe, it survived by reinventing itself. And Requiem proves that sometimes your biggest failure becomes your greatest turning point. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I'm new to this YouTube thing, but I think I want to keep doing it. I've always been passionate about video games and I always love talking about them. Right now I'm just going over games that resonated with me personally, but if anyone has any recommendations, definitely drop them down in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. If you guys have any suggestions or constructive criticism, please let me know down in the comments. I'm always open to any suggestions. But other than that, thank you so much for watching again, and I'll see you in the next one.